it did, raise your hand a little bit. I went, yeah, it did for me. I was trying to think, how do I emphasize home is where the heart is? But I think sometimes we have to go back and look at that. We have to look at, well, what was mine like? And so I did that. I looked back at my life and I went, okay, what did that bring up for me? Well, it brought up abandonment for me. When I was a baby, my mom, I won't go through my story, okay? But the point being is brought that up. It brought up shifting from home to home. I don't know if you know about that, but I did. I shifted from my father to my grandmother to my stepmother to my, I went back and forth and all the way through from, 0 to, I think, 18 when I finally left. It brought up the quirky family. Anybody have a quirky family? History of quirky families? Yeah. It brought up finding the one in my family that really, really loved me. It brought up what was my one central home. And it was my grandmother. It's my grandmother. In fact, I have a couple little quick stories. One was when I was no more than that tall. And back then, you didn't have the malls. You had 3rd Avenue and the businesses down 3rd Avenue in Chula Vista. And 3rd Avenue from E to F. That's all it was when I was growing up. And so we would go and look for shoes, right? And of course, I'm this tall. You can barely see me. And so she works at Frederica Manor, and she's always on her feet. And so she had to have good shoes. So we're going to the shoe store, and she's looking at, you looked in the window then at the shoes. And I'm right there next to her, and I go, little girls like shoes too. She went in and bought me a pair of shoes. And that's the kind of person he was. Or I've talked about this in our abundance class. Somewhere I learned that there was an abundance, and I never understood why, actually until we did the summer class. And the reason why is when I was going to college, when I was going to college, college students don't have any money, right? Well, my grandmother had this thing underneath her bed, and it was a shoebox. And every week, I can remember, almost felt like every day, but I went there and I said, I need money for food or whatever. And she said, go under the bed. Go under the bed. I go under the bed and I pull out whatever was there. That box never emptied. There was always money in that box. So, it's those little memories that come back, and I'm sure as I pull my memories up, you're pulling yours up. Today we're going to talk about memories and not just about mine, but I want you to think about yours. What were your memories of growing up as a child? And then, what else do I have here? Anyway, the idea of a home is where the heart is. It comes in many forms. Obviously, there's spiritual, but then there's what I would say our home that we had to go to or we went to where we felt whole, perfect, whole, and complete. We felt safe. We could be, as the word says, unvarnished self. Do you remember being an unvarnished self in your home? I did. I was a bad kid once in a while. But we knew we belonged no matter what. And I'll tell you a little quick story. There was a time when I didn't know if I belonged. I had a bad stepmother, and one day I rebelled because she wanted me to do things that I didn't want to do, and so she threw me down the steps. As a little girl, I think I was about 8 or 9, and I had to wait outside until my dad came home. But you know what? I knew I was going to be okay because I had a home to go to. I had someone who loved me unconditionally, and I never had to worry about that. And over my lifetime, I've gone back and forth. She's no longer with me, and I think I hope she'd be proud of me today that I've done what I've done with my life. But I always knew I had someplace to go. And I'm not saying this for you to feel sorry for me. I want you to get it, that this is something we have to acknowledge. There's always somebody there. There was always somebody there. The other thing that she did for me, and this is kind of interesting, is that she allowed me to thrive. Allowed me to thrive. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, in ways that I never expected. And it was all unconditional. I have no idea, because we were not rich by any means, where it came from, where the money came from to do the things that I did. Maya Angelou says, the ache for home lives in all of us. Do y'all have that? You know what I'm talking about? It's that ache inside. It's like, yeah, even though it may be different for each one of us, it is something that we think about every once in a while. I mean, I think about in different ways. I wrote down some things that I think happened to us along the way to becoming. And I think this is important because I think all of us have the same thing happen to us, where we struggle to grow in our own way. Anybody do that as you were growing up? Struggle to go in our own way. And then somebody put in correction and said, no, you can't do that. Especially if you were a Baptist. Now, I was a Baptist, so there was none of this, straight and narrow you had to be. So anyway, here's what I wrote, which I think you can relate to. It's the cycle of love. Who loves me today? Who loves me tomorrow? Who do I go to for that? Stretching our boundaries. We're always trying to stretch ourselves. Experiencing our hormones. Anybody have that one growing up? And around your parents? Like, how do I deal with this? Doing what we were told to do, and then rebelling. I did that one. Reforming. Deciding what was right and wrong, because we had to. As a child, we were always growing up trying to learn what was right and wrong, challenging what was right and wrong, conforming, growing, deciding, and then becoming. Then doing it all again at a different stage. So at every stage of our life, we were constantly growing and doing this push-pull. We still do it today, right? You're still doing it today. You're trying to figure things out. You're trying to go, what works for me? What doesn't work for me? How do I want to get there? What's going to come to me that's going to make that happen? So we're always doing that. Albert Einstein, let me see if I have this up here. I do. Oh, the video. He says, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. Early challenge life experiences can predispose one to expect the worst from life. And I think about my life and I think about, I could have gone that direction. And I think I did for a while, but then I shifted back. And then Ernest Holmes says, we are all carrying the negative experiences of our past into the future, merely because we have not disconnected from them in our minds. If we are creating a negative future, it's because we have not changed our thought about it. Thankfully, we know we can think differently. And now, I want to say, I'm sure some of you had really great lives being brought up. And I think that's wonderful. But there are little parts of that you wish maybe it might have been different. And that's okay. I'm not trying to say that life wasn't good. I did a lot of things as a kid that I never thought I would ever do. Ever. I traveled. I played badminton. I went to tournaments. I did things that most kids didn't get to do. And that was very unique. And I did not come from a rich family at all. Anyway, I want to talk about a country, in my travels as a minister, I go to these conferences and I learn about different aspects of individuals and people and as they grow up. And there was one, and this was, I think, my very first conference in Chicago. And they did it was about bringing children up and what happens to them when they have attention from the age of 0 to like 7 years old. Anyway, there's a country called Denmark. We all know Denmark. It has the lowest ratio of crime due to the way they raise their children, which I think is fascinating. Anyway, one small fact, I'm not going to get all into that, but one small fact is if a woman gets pregnant before she's married, the government will actually fund her to take care of that child from 0 to 7. They will pay for everything. And then if she still is not married, they will then subsidize her, at least 25% of her income, because she then has to go to work, to babysit. And they do that now with all families. They'll subsidize 25% of the child care. So it's not overwhelming the parents. So if they have a lot of children, it's still not overwhelming them as far as raising the child. And I say this because I want us to realize that there are countries that are actually actively doing this. And not to get into that for our country, I think that we're moving in the direction of that anyway. When I was growing up, it was unconventional. It was confusing. And yet I always knew where I was going to end up. I always knew where to go when I had an issue. I always knew there was someone. And I think that all of us have that. Do you all have somebody in mind that you would go to when you had something happen and you needed? Good. Okay. I didn't want to make sure I wasn't alone up here. So, and if you know that, then right now where you're sitting, I think you can also feel that. There's a warmth in there about that person or that place or that you would go to. And I want you to think about that as I talk about this. I want you to think about how all of your needs in every situation were always met. Whether you had a lot of money or didn't have a lot of money. Interesting enough, everything was always met at some point. Now, if I bring this down into a spiritual place, I grew up as a Baptist. But I didn't quite understand all of that. And at some point, I left the church because I couldn't understand that. But I knew, and something was instilled in me, that there was something greater outside of me. So I had a home within me that knew. And so I can remember as a little girl, imagine this is grass over here, is that I lay on the grass and I would talk to the clouds over the rainbow. And I would say to God, whatever I was bargaining for, if you really do this, then you'll do that for me. The truth is, I didn't know it at the time, but I had intention. That's what we teach here. I had intention here. So if I kept my word and I followed through with my word, then what did God say? Everybody should know the answer here. Yes. Amazing, huh? Back then, and I was this little tiny girl. So each one of us, I think, have had that. We know that, at least I think most of us know, that there's something greater than us happening out there. There's this creation. We just have to look around and there's creation everywhere. Something greater is happening out there. Ernest Holmes says this, Ernest Holmes says this. He says, all our reactions to life are related to our spiritual convictions. We cannot escape this. Just as a child needs to have confidence in his parents, so we all need the same confidence in a power that is greater than we are. And so along the way, we have figured out, by relating to our life, that there is something greater out there happening, because we are still here today. Right? We are still here today. Now, I took my experience and thought, so how would I explain that today to somebody that didn't know about what we teach? And here's what I came up with. As I put my intentions, my convictions, and thoughts into that which is in my heart, this is the key. This is what's in my heart. The universe says yes and reveals to me a direct path to that which I want. Here's the catch, though. As long as I continue to say yes to the direction I want to pursue. But since we have choice, I can always change that. I say, no, that one doesn't feel right. And the universe will say, yes, okay. Yeah. It will come back and give you the permission to go ahead and change your mind. So, from a spiritual perspective, it took me a long time to really find what I would call my true avenue. My method of believing my way of being something greater. I feel like from the time I stopped becoming a Baptist, I traveled to many different religions. I tried to figure out, what is it that I want to be? What is it? Come on through. So I had to experience life. Anybody do that during the last 45, 50 years? Had to experience life. I had to find my way. And for me, and that's even here today, I had to trust in something greater and develop my path along the way and internally believe I could co-create with something greater. And that's what we teach here, is how do you co-create your life with something out there? Whatever that is, we call it God, intelligence, universe, energy. How do we do that? And that's what we teach here. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things, the process of growing up. And this may be applied to you and it may not. And that's okay either way. But I want you to think about yourself at these different stages of your life. The first one is as a baby. As a baby. I had a very tumultuous upbringing as a baby. And I won't go into the story, but bottom line is my mother left me at 3 years old. She didn't really leave me. I was taken from her at 3 years old. And because of that, I have this vision, I have this picture. You know how you have pictures in your mind of stages of your life? This is one picture I have as a little tiny girl in a big bucket. That's where I was, and I was outside and my brothers were playing. And I remember leaving. I remember being in bed and dreaming that I was flying. I don't know why, but I dreamt that. And I remember my parents arguing, and then my mother taking us. And for a while, she wasn't around. So there was not that sense of security for me. But then pretty soon, my dad showed up, and my mom was gone. And then my grandmother took over. So I have this ebb and flow of what happened to me as a child. And they say that when a child is born, that somewhere along the line, they will feel or experience a physical, emotional, mental relationship with someone. And I'm sure it's that point in my life, it became my grandmother. Because I became secure. I felt safe. I could be who I wanted to be. Now, I want to say to you, I have a sister that's 3 years younger than me. And all this happened just after she was born. She did not have the same experience. She felt all that turmoil and all that stuff that was going on. And because of that, her life is totally different than mine. Mine was very secure. I believed in things. I moved things forward. I'm not afraid of life. I mean, I was at some point, but mostly I'm not afraid because I truly trust in this thing that we call God. She moved through life, and the funny thing is I didn't learn this until just probably recently, that her life was totally different. She followed me. She had to struggle for her stuff. She didn't have the same support systems that I had. And she was always following, you know how, don't you hate this, when you always had a brother or sister that was better than you in high school or junior high? And then they always expected you to be the same. Well, she had to follow me. So it was a whole different way of being brought up and experienced than I did, even though we were in the same household. Very interesting. But because of that, she didn't feel as good about herself, and so she'd make things up. She would say things. Now, this is not to say that she's not a good person, because I think she's a great person. She raised 3 beautiful children and has done a really incredible job for her life. And I think we grow into that over time. But it was different. It was harder for her. And so it's interesting to see how that happens. So I want you to think about your life. What happened to you? And not in a way that it's bad, but just, oh, okay, that might be why I'm kind of like I am. You know, I never thought about that. I never really thought about that. And then as we grow up, we learn about what we call boundaries. Boundaries. Now, boundaries are to make us feel safe and give us courage and confidence, okay? And healthy boundaries give us parameters. If we don't have boundaries, then life can be pretty complex. Brene Brown says this, and she studies people who live in a sense of belonging. But she says participants who put true belonging into practice talked openly about their boundaries. The clearer and the more respected boundaries, the higher the level of empathy and compassion for others. Fewer clear boundaries, less openness. It's hard to stay kind-hearted when you feel people are taking advantage of you or threatening you. And for many years, I think I felt that way. I didn't realize it had to do with boundaries. Now, I want to say, and I think this is a true statement, is that for me, I never heard the word boundary. Did you hear the word boundaries as you grew up? No. No, it was just don't do it this way or do it this way. They never said the word boundary. So as society, we have learned to use the word boundary. Today, I want to call it a spiritual practice. We don't think of boundaries as a spiritual practice, but it really is. It allows us to have what I call an internal power and a compass. Which way do we go? Left, right, up, down? To identify what works in our life and what does not work in our life. And the other thing is, I think it gives us permission. And Brene talks about that. She talks about permission to say no and do something different, or to say yes. So, truth is, boundaries are a spiritual practice. And it's not about eliminating people. It's about saying, what works for me today? You know, a lot of times I think that we allow everything outside of ourselves to have more priority than what works for me today. And if we can just, I counsel lots of times on this, and that is that instead of just saying yes, and I do yes a lot because I don't want to fight with people, I just get it done. But instead of going, you know, how does that feel in me today? How does that feel at this moment? And as I feel that moment, then make the choice. And that's just an internal boundary. It's not a bad thing, not a good thing, it just is. So think about how can you do that for yourself. The last point I want to make is we eventually become adults. Would you call yourself an adult today? Yeah. But what we learn along the way is to believe in ourselves. At some point, and I think it took me many, many years to really believe in myself. Too many years, I want to say. But in believing in myself, I am not afraid anymore. I mean, you know, I listen to when I need to be in fear, I understand all that, but I'm not afraid to say. In fact, I sometimes say the thing that nobody wants to talk about. It sometimes gets me in trouble because I say the thing that nobody wants to talk about.
Or my favorite, saying the thing that everybody else is thinking, but is afraid to say.
That's right. Everybody's thinking but afraid to say it. That's right. That's right. But there's some value in that, because what we do is we give permission then. We give permission for the rest of everybody else to say what's, not being said. Brene says this. She says, belonging is the innate human desire to be a part of something larger than us. Because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and by seeking approval, which are not only hollow substitutes for belonging, but often barriers to it. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. I love this, our authentic, imperfect self into the world. If you got the newsletter and you read the newsletter, I had proof of that before I sent it. There were 2 big mistakes in there. I used to really hate making mistakes. I wanted to be so perfect. But I now, because someone said it would not be perfect if there was not a mistake in there, I give myself permission to make a mistake. This is an important lesson for me and for all of us. It's okay to make a mistake. There's nothing wrong with that. But I love this imperfect self to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. To me, that's the most important thing. Sometimes I remember when I started as a minister, and you have to go through these 3 years of trial and tribulation of, do you really want to do that as you grow up? And I remember walking into the minister's office, a couple of them, and I'd say, oh, we got to do this and we got to do that. I was so excited about being a minister. It's like, I have power now. And one person said to me, if you want it today, the answer is no. If you want it in a few days after I think about it, then it's a maybe. And so part of that was learning how to manage my excitement and yet realize that, gee, there's a bigger picture here than just me. It's having that self-acceptance of who I was and where I was and what my level was. And so today I get to carry that through. I take that one thing at a time to make sure that it is good for the whole. Everything is good for the whole. So, home is where the heart is right here. It's within you. But I think that sometimes we have leftovers, things that we have not completed. And so for everyone that's online and for all of you here, we're going to do a little process. And when I first started my ministry, I started with a process. So we would end with a process and talk about it. But since we kind of keep the time limit, we're going to hand something out to you and a pin to you. And do not fill this out until we'll do it all together. But it's a little short process. It's going to take maybe 5 minutes to do. But you'll get to think about, is there anything left over from my childhood that I kind of want to let go of? I want to move forward. So let's go ahead and hand those out. And I might need some help. Oh, good. Thank you so much. And we're going to give you a magazine so that you can... No, that's okay. And if you need a pen, raise your hand. We'll get you a pen. And for all of you online, we're going to do this in stages. So get a piece of paper out so that you can also do this along with us. Okay? Now, depending on how much time we have, we may share with a partner. So, all right, everybody ready? Got it? So get a piece of paper out. And what I like you to do in the beginning is to just write, what is my story? So what is that thing that's been hanging out there for all these years that we want to let go of? What's my story? Mine was, I was abandoned. I'm always working on my abandonment issue. No matter who I am, I'm always working on it. So when you leave me, I cry, okay? Because I love you dearly. You're important to me. And that's where my home is, in my heart. So what's your story? And just write a couple words. Don't write a paragraph. Just a couple things. Just something that kind of brings that back up. I was always the one after following my brother or sister. Could be whatever that is. I'm going to move on this fast, so don't write a lot. So now go to the question on the left side. It says, what old beliefs are you feeding? Well, the old belief for me was I was abandoned. Truth is, I was not. I was moved around. But what is that thing, that old belief that you continue to feed? Another one for me was I was abused. Well, that abuse taught me something about myself, that I could fight the abuse and move on. So what is that old belief you're feeding? Just write something down. Doesn't matter what it is, just a word. And then the other opposite of that is, what belief do you want to feed yourself with? So for me, it was, I'm strong, I can survive, I was always loved no matter what it looked like. Okay. The next question is, do you feel the universe is true and fair, and are you true and fair to yourself? So the answer might be yes and no, or maybe yes, yes, or maybe no, no. It's okay. It's just identify what is and what is not. And then the next one is, what would true and fair look like in your story? So what would be the ideal picture for you? Well, for me, maybe it was that my mother never left and my father and all got along. But now I'm glad they didn't, because I get to do what I'm doing today. Everything's on purpose. Or maybe it was that I get to spend more time with my father. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but I always think about these things. Let's fill that out. I'm moving you along pretty fast here. We have a second half here. For those of you online, I hope you're kind of filling that out too. I'm going to move on to the next section. Next section is, what new seeds of thought do I want to plant in your future, my future? What kind of seed do you want to plant? I am capable, I am directed, I am supported, the universe says yes to me. What are those things that you want, new seeds of thought that you can continually plant within you? I am capable, everything I need comes to me, because you're setting your intention right now. Don't be afraid of it. I'm giving you permission today. And then the last one is, what new story do you want to create? I want a new job. I want more money. I deserve more. I work hard. I want direction. I want guidance. I am happy with my life. I know I'm fully supported. Everything I do is amazing. So I'm going to, Martin, I'm going to ask you, we're going to do, let me ask you first a question. How comfortable are you with sharing with each other? Yes or no? If there's one no, I'll stop. Everybody okay? Are you okay with sharing your story? Because sometimes people are not. I want to make sure. I have 100% on that? Okay, good. All right, so what I'm going to do is, Martin, I want you to just briefly, so all of you online, you need to listen. What we're going to do is put you in a breakout room, one-to-one. So you've got 1, 2, just do 2 breakout rooms and let them be random. And you're going to share your sheet. You're not going to share a lot of time, because you're only going to get like 2 minutes, like a minute apiece, to share your answers. Because there's something about saying this out loud to each other. Do you know what I mean? Because as you hear yourself, you start to relate to, I can do this. I can do this. All right, so go ahead and do a breakout room and pair up. So 2, 2, the 2 of you back there. Can you do with Brenda and Jerry, and then you 2? How about the 3 of you over here? And then, would you 2 want to share together, or you want? Yeah, you and Heidi are. Okay. All right, and then the 2. All right. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. 3 minutes, okay? So go ahead. 90 seconds each. Share your answers. Share your answers. Go ahead. Can you do a breakout room with them? Never mind. How about if those that are online, if you just open up your mics and talk to each other, those that want to share. Oh, there you go.
But also like, yeah, so. What is, it's not a story, I don't even know if that's a story, those are some of the highlights. Yes, okay, so I'll check. What all believes you, scarcity? What believes you, what the people say about this? A lot of evidence tests, so that part of it's getting better. But then again, we just confirmed that, just was trying to get ahead. 6,000 transmission, so. You hear the images straight there? Yeah, I did. I did. And I want to make sure I'm fair to myself, but I'm getting better.
The intention
I don't
was,
beat myself up.
what a great message. Bible would cite the lines.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute left. So let's come forward. So my question to you, is this helpful to look at this? Okay, anybody want to share briefly, and I'm going to repeat it so that those online can hear. Anybody want to share briefly? Not all at once.
Reverend Suzanne, if I may, that thing you
Yeah.
said about boundaries,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that there's Eckhart Tolle, who I love,
Can you turn his mic on, please?
So, talking about boundaries, Eckhart Tolle, who's one of my favorite authors and teachers, had this great thing he said, sometimes you have to say no, but make it a quality no. A no that comes from a place of presence.
Right.
I think that's a really good way to describe what you were talking about that
Yeah.
immediately came to mind.
Yeah. A real knowing. No. All right. Well, I'm not quite done yet. So, anybody want to share? I'm just going to give you one more moment. All right, Jerry.
So how much time have I got?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, so came from place of shame about my sexual orientation, shame about original sin, and the fact that you're toast no matter what happened. Plus, right? Yes, right. Plus, my mother gave birth to very premature twins when I was 4 years old, and she heard them cry, and they died.
Oh.
And they didn't make it, and this was 1962.
Yeah.
And so, for years after, we go to the cemetery on Easter to visit the twins, and I'm a 4-year-old child and a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old seeing all of this, saying, "But I'm still here. You wanted them more than you want me."
Yeah.
And so now,
Man.
however many years later, it's the thing about, I have to say yes so that you'll love me. I have to say yes so that you'll accept me. I'll go anywhere, do anything, buy anything, whatever it is, if you'll just love me. And I'm 93 2/3% done with that, but every once in a while there's still a little creep in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's still the adventure adventure, and I think when I'm done with it, I don't need to be here anymore. So I'm still
There you
working on
go.
it.
Still working on it. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. Yay. Sorry, I can't share that again. That's a lot to say. But we just know that Jerry is perfect, whole, and complete, just the way he is.
Yes, he is.
That's right. And loved.
Yes.
Dearly loved. Dearly loved. All right. So I'm going to end this with I was inspired by someone talking about the Science of Mind 365, and Ernest Holmes says this: the desire, I hear an echo. Thank you. Turn his mic down, thanks. The desire for a richer life has always been a heart of the human striving. Something within each of us, in our innermost being, knows that the greater possibility exists for us. Though we may sense these possibilities only faintly, they evoke a deep longing for fulfillment. This longing is the essence of what makes us both human and divine. To be divine means to possess the power of creativity, to be capable of expansion that is progressive and eternal. So I thought, how would I like you to end this so that you realize something? That Om is your home. And I really mean that, because from the beginning of creation of this organization, which is bigger than that appears, because many of us are online, many of us are with family, many of us are ill, is that here we always try to create, well, I'm just going to call it this, a healthy environment. A healthy church environment, which doesn't always exist, I have to tell you. But that's where you feel safe and hopefully fully expressed. So you can be whoever you are, and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about before church starts. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a space where you can feel emotionally as well as physically safe. You know, one thing that upsets me the most is when I hear a church has been invaded. And so I'm always thinking about your safety. Part of being able to look at the doors to make sure that nobody comes in here that's not safe. We need to always feel safe in our sanctuary. It's where you can look at your boundaries. Sometimes people don't want a hug. You can go hi. You can have a boundary around those kinds of things, or whatever. There's a lot that goes into that. Where you can create, and I put and create and create and create. To me, creation is the activity of God in your life. And so we create here a lot. So if you're not creating, we're going to get you into that. It's very important. And probably the most important, well, not the most, but one of the most important, is that you can learn about yourself. And you can grow even more. And the one thing I hear all the time is without judgment. We don't judge you here, because growing is a part of life, and you must grow. And sometimes, and I know I do, say the wrong thing. It doesn't matter. It just is. It just is. So you get to grow. And then you can make a mistake, like I talked about. I make them on purpose now. I want you to find my mistakes. Because the world's not going to end because we make a mistake. It just is. It just is. And then the last thing, which to me is the most important, is that you feel loved and appreciated. Because this organization does not happen without people who really love what we do. And that I appreciate them all. And people say, we say that so much. I said, I can't say it enough. I can't say it enough. You need to know how much you're loved and appreciated, because that's what we have in here. We have love. The room oozes with love. And that's what I want, because then when you come back, you know you're always going to have the same thing. And get to do it over and over and over again. So then you'll visit me more often. That's what I like. So anyway, I'm going to end this with a prayer so that we can all just take this in, carry it through the next week, practice what I talked about. Think about, you have that sheet of paper, look at that and go, oh, what can I work on? Because that's part of this growth, is looking at our stuff and going, oh, I want to let go of that little one, that little part. I need to let go of that so that I can be more fully who I want to be. So let's close our eyes. And I'm just knowing here and now that we are absolutely, completely, fully surrounded by this incredible essence that we call it God, that infinite intelligence, that creative power that moves in our lives. And we're connected to that. We're one with that. There's no separation. There's no place where God is not. And as I know that truth, I know today that as we have looked in our past and moved into our adulthood, we know that everything that we needed to be who we are today has already been supplied. And today is about believing in who we are and that we are a powerful force in the universe and we're here to do very good work. And so I bless each person that's willing to hear that message today, to know the absolute truth about themselves, that they are one with an infinite powerful source, co-creating the good that we see in the world. And so as we know this truth, we look for that good, we recognize that good, and we perpetuate that good. And so I bless each of us, and I bless the message of knowing that we are one with something greater. And so with that, I give great thanks. I release these words into our infinite world and mind, knowing that we have just reinforced the truth about ourselves. Knowing that, I give great thanks, and so it is. Amen. Yay. Thank you very much. Let's bring back Cahill and Delene. Yay.
Reverend Suzette, that was incredible, really. Wow. All of our stories, huh? You know, if we had the definition of quirky, and if we looked at the definition of quirky in the dictionary, all our pictures would be there, right? All our family pictures would be there. Well, this is the perfect New Thought song. It's a song by ABBA. You're welcome to sing along.
1, 2, 3.
I have a dream, a song to sing, to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale, you can take the future, even if you fail. I believe in angels, something good in everything I see. I believe in angels when I know the time is right for me. I'll cross the stream. I have a dream. I'll cross the stream. I have a dream. I have a dream of fantasy to help me through reality. At my destination makes it worth the while, pushing through the darkness, still another mile. I believe in angels, something good in everything I see. I believe in angels when I know the time is right for me. I'll cross the stream. I have a dream. I'll cross the stream. I have a dream. I have a dream, a song to sing, street. Yeah.